Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on what I suppose I can only describe, at least for the time being, as Lithorati's first podcast. Does it really qualify as a podcast? I'm not quite sure. I don't. I don't think I can think of a better word to describe it at the moment. For me, I guess for it to be a podcast, it has to be more than one episode. And right now, I've got no idea whether this idea is going to have the legs for future installments. But at the very least, I suspect we'll have some fun talking about some Guns N' Roses and some of their lithographs. And with any luck, all of you listening at home will enjoy listening along. I think first and foremost, we should probably get started by introducing ourselves. My name is Rich, also known as Ricky. The lithograph database website, Lithorati.com, is my brainchild. I'm a fellow Guns N' Roses fan and clearly very obsessive about the artwork that has been generated by this Not in This Lifetime tour. I have with me my good friend Tim, who, along with being not just a Guns N' Roses lithograph fan, but is perhaps the leading name in the world of Guns N' Roses merchandise and memorabilia. If you're a Guns N' Roses fan and you have any questions regarding the mountains of merchandise and assorted GNR-related paraphernalia that is out there in the world, I think you would be very hard-pressed to find someone who could provide you with more answers than Tim. So thank you very much for joining me on this podcast, Tim.
Hey, man. Yeah, no problem. Hey, everyone. This is Tim. Most of you know me as Tricoli on the forums, but if you've met me in real life, then you know my name is Tim. I'm a huge GNR fan, obviously, and I guess a crazy collector. It's that I would certainly classify probably as an addiction, I suppose, right? Good or bad, I don't know. I have a website, I don't think it's as good as the website that Rich has. And my website is for all the memorabilia that I've collected over the years. But yeah, Rich, I'm great. I'm glad to be talking with you. I think what you've done for everyone with this website of yours is a great thing and a great service. And I don't know about everyone else, but I'm certainly thankful for it. So I appreciate it, man.
The feeling is mutual. I think that my scope is very, very small. I've just focused on the lithographs, but anyone that's been to your website should know that your scope is very, very broad. You've definitely covered a large scope of the GNR landscape. But I think we should also maybe introduce ourselves a little bit and explain to some people who may not necessarily know who we are, why we decided to do this podcast, and maybe why we maybe are qualified to sort of give our opinions. I think first and foremost, let's start with how we got into Guns N' Roses and became fans. I think. Let's go. Let's start ahead. Start with you first, Tim. How did Guns N' Roses become such a big factor in your life?
Sure, man. I couldn't really tell you the first time I heard a Guns N' Roses song. I mean, it could have been on the radio, or for everyone that doesn't know, I was born in 1977. So when Appetite comes out, I'm 10 years old. I know for a fact that the first time I listened to the entire Appetite for Destruction album was probably in January or February of 1988 on we were taking a trip up to the Poconos. I'm from Long Island, New York, so we were going to the Poconos and with some family members, and my cousin had this tape and I listened to it and it blew my mind, right? And so pretty much from then on, I was definitely into the band. And over the years, I just like how this band kind of and this could be a positive or negative, but I think for me anyway, it's definitely a positive that they kind of do what they want. You know what I mean? They do their own thing. They don't really care, if it sells well, if it does well, or what people have to say about it or think about it. They do their own thing, and I respect that very much. As for collecting, I don't know. I think it was like maybe 92 or 93, and downtown Huntington, where I'm from on Long Island, they used to have some independent record stores there, and I think they just had a few odds and ends. Maybe like one of them maybe even had that. There's like a bootleg box set called The Story Volume One and The Story Volume Two, and it had like a lot of alternate takes of songs from back then. And
Right.
I don't know, it just got me fascinated and got me started in all of it, and from then on, well, here we are today.
Do you remember the moment when you realized that this was, that it had it had changed, that it had gone from just being a fan to, hey, you know what, I'm going to start collecting anything and everything, was there a key factor there, a key moment that made you realize that?
Um, you know, I don't know, really sure that there was, I mean, but I will say that, because some bands, and I think Jane Art is definitely one of them. Sometimes there's just so much out there, and you're like, well, I don't even know where to start or what to do, and you know, um, so for a while there were certain things that I didn't collect, like like the 3-inch CD singles from Japan. I didn't
Right.
I didn't collect those. I was like, well, I'm just gonna stay away from. I don't know why those. I just had to narrow it down somehow, right? But eventually my addiction got the better hold of me, and I just started collecting pretty much anything and everything. Um, and I do remember. Um, yeah, I would tell people about this, including my own, immediate family, and they think I was kind of crazy, right? Um, and they also didn't see, and don't remember, and let me make something very clear right off the top of the top of things here. I don't collect as like an investment or anything like that. I mean, sure, if I ever have to sell, of course, I hope these things are worth at least the same amount I paid, if not more, in the future. But that's not why I do it. I mean, even if they end up being worth nothing, that's fine with me. I do it because I like it, and because I don't know, it's just something that I have a passion about, I guess, right? And and that's kind of why I also did the website, and not only so other people can see my collection, but so I can see my collection too. Because currently it's all sitting in boxes and in closets, so I can't really. I don't live like in a huge mansion where I can display everything. That'd be great, but it's just not the reality for me at the moment. So this way, I can look at my collection as well by just going online and looking at things. Um, and so the day that the whole box set happened, right, and all that, then my family finally started to understand a little bit more that this was like a pretty decent and serious collection that I have here. And yeah, from there, it's kind of like frustrating too, trying to track down certain things that are very hard to get, and we'll talk about that with the lithographs, especially some of the ones from like South America and stuff. In a maybe in a later podcast or so, but or a later episode, I should say. But it's hard for me to pinpoint a moment, I guess, to answer your original question there. Right.
No, that's okay. I think that that certainly provides a lot of information for people to realize that how extensive your collection is, and certainly how passionate you are about collecting Guns N' Roses merchandise. I think one thing I seen certainly one thing that I admire about your approach to collecting is that at least from my perspective, your ability to sort of drown out this nagging feeling, at least that I get when something is not complete. Like I am very much a completionist. I get very anxious. I twist and turn at night, sometimes finding it difficult to get to sleep if there's one particular thing that I'm searching for that I can't find. And I can't, I don't know, from if I was in your shoes, not having absolutely everything in 1,000 different collections would probably drive me pretty crazy. But I think maybe for considering how broad your collection is, it's going to be impossible to have absolutely everything. So maybe there was a point where you realized that you're never going to have absolutely every item ever made or ever released or ever put out there into the world. And clearly, you have the ability to fall asleep at night. And I wish I had that level of composure.
Well,
Yeah.
I can tell you that I certainly have had I don't know if you want to call it a dream or a nightmare, depends on the scenario, but about certain items and about Guns N' Roses, I can tell you that right now. So,
You would not be alone.
um, I don't know, I guess some of it has related to memorabilia, some of it has just related to, like, I don't know, like meeting members or, or stuff like that, right? You know what I mean? There's been different scenarios and different dreams and stuff, I guess, but what I've gotten, there was a point at which, like, I would I would either forget about like an eBay auction or I would get outbid in an eBay auction and I would get very frustrated, right? But nowadays, I don't get me wrong. I obviously want the item still, but nowadays I've just kind of grown to accept it, and I just say, oh well, and I move on, and I'll save the image from the auction. I'll put it in my wanted section of my website, right?
Right.
And that'll be it, right? I it's not a lot of fun or anything, but sometimes you just miss out on things. And I will say, in case anyone's wondering, yeah, I mean, a lot of things have come from eBay, right? But I definitely, hey man, I wish more independent record stores existed because I love going to independent record stores and looking for stuff. And when you find something, it's such a great feeling that you didn't have to get it on eBay. You could get it in person. You could feel it. You could touch it. You could look at it first. And unfortunately, just independent record stores are dying. And so the only way to get stuff now is either the internet and or eBay. It's just the way it is, right?
Wholeheartedly agree there. I think one thing that I remembered, I suppose, or realized recently, last year. Last year, I went to your neck of the woods. I went to Seattle.
Yeah, man.
To go see Duff, and that was the first time when they played at Easy Street Records, when Duff played at Easy Street.
That's cool.
That was the first time. Yeah, that was the first time that I had been to Easy Street, and it was the first time that I'd been to a genuine record store in more than a decade. I would think maybe closer to 2 decades, and I had forgotten how cool the atmosphere is standing in a record store, like a real record store,
right.
And how much enjoyment there is to browse through records, and yeah, it's a sad thing that independent record stores are dying out. I think that they provide a certain something that's missing right now in that sort of industry. But I hope that they'd stick around at least for the foreseeable future. Sadly, I don't have any suggestions on how to improve their success rate. But as long as there's some laying around, I guess that's the best we can hope for now.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Okay.
So hey, Rich. So I want to ask you. So how did you get into Guns N' Roses? The band in general.
Well, I'm a little bit younger than you, not by much, but I distinctly remember that I was listening to a lot of the music that my father liked. My father was into a lot of the European bands, Pink Floyd, and the Animals. He really loved the Animals, and I remember distinctly hanging out on the playground, and the older kids were listening to this crazy new album, and what it's like when you're 7 or 8 years old. The 10-year-olds are the cool kids, and the cool kids were listening to Appetite for Destruction, and that's pretty much the story right there. As soon as I heard what they were listening to, it really blew my mind, and I've been a Guns N' Roses fan ever since. Probably the only way that I may differ from a large percentage of Guns N' Roses fans is I'll be honest, when they sort of fell apart and it was just Axl going around without any of the other original members. I'm willing to admit that I lost interest in the band. As far as I was concerned, it really wasn't Guns N' Roses anymore. But my love for the band never went away. I was just not interested in their current version, the current rendition. So it really struck a chord with me when Slash and Duff decided to come back for the reunion tour.
I'm sure it
Because
did.
then it really felt like it. The band that I fell in love with was back. So that I was out in the wilderness for many years, just like I think Guns N' Roses were. But they're back, and I came back, and I think that it's working out pretty well so far.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. And no one can
So
fault you for. I mean, like, hey, man. And before anyone even comments or gets into it, like, people have different opinions of the band and the history of the band. So hey, some people didn't like the Chinese Democracy era. Some people did. Some people like both, and all that's fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. And yeah, that's cool, man. Yeah.
I think once Chinese Democracy actually came out, I had sort of walked myself back. Like it was just that era when, like before pre-Chinese Democracy, when there was no new album and no Slash, no Duff, no anyone really except for Axl. That was the really tough sort of time for me. But then once Chinese Democracy came out, even without the three those three guys back together touring, my interest increased again. But then once they actually did come back together as the three for the reunion tour, then I was really back in.
Sure. And just so everyone's clear, no disrespect to Dizzy Reed. We know he's been in the band a long time, but clearly we're talking about the big three here. So just to make that clear to everyone. All right.
Sure. Well, look, we could. I will be the first to admit that if somehow the planets aligned and Izzy and Steven came back, I'm not going to say no to that. But
Sure.
I'm a little bit more pragmatic, I suppose, a little bit more realistic. That I don't see it happening quite anytime soon. So I'm not going to hold my breath. But if it happens, I'll be there
Yep.
without a doubt.
Yep.
So yeah, okay. Well, so that's our story with regard to Guns N' Roses. Let's be a little bit more specific here. Let's talk about getting into the lithos from this from the Not in This Lifetime tour.
Right on.
I am pretty sure that you got into it, or they sunk their hooks into you earlier than they did with me. Maybe if you would like to give me or give us some insight into what it was like when the Not in This Lifetime tour came about and they started touring all over again with Slash and Duff back in the mix, and we're pumping out these lithographs. How did you get into the lithos, so to speak?
Sure. Well, of course, I didn't even know they were going to have lithographs until I started seeing, pictures and stories about the merchandise from the Troubadour show. And even then, I'm not clear if, like, the Troubadour, if those were given out to people as they were leaving or if they were selling those there. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, of course, being a GNR collecting fanatic that I am, I wanted a lot of the merchandise from that show, including that lithograph. And from once they started playing the other shows like Vegas, it was pretty clear to me at that point that they were probably going to have lithographs at every show. Even then, though, I was like, well, it's Coachella. I mean, I'm sorry, it's Vegas. And then with the Coachella shows, I was like, okay, they have lithographs for these shows because, like, they're the first shows, But I don't know if they're going to do it for the rest of the tour. But then, obviously, it became clear that they were going to. My problem at that point was, I didn't really know a lot of the GNR fans at that point, and I don't mean I knew them online, but I never really met them in life, in person. In 2014 at the Vegas residency, that's when I met a lot of GNR fans, but most of those fans were not people who were attending these shows. There were people like, I met Yarmo then, but I don't feel comfortable asking people inside the camp to get me anything, or And
Right.
I met MSL then, and I met a lot of people. The only one that I met then that you might know was Tyler.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Yeah, and so I knew a few of these people, and then when I met everyone was the same time you probably did in December in Hawaii, right? You know,
Oh, okay.
that's when I met like Alex and Margot and a lot of these people. And so, but even if I had known them then, um, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'll ask people for help and stuff, but you know, a lot of people that I know are rail people, so it's a little harder for them to get merchandise, and I understand that, and you know, and not only get it, but then hold on to it, and we'll talk about that in a later episode probably too. Um, but you know, and so what I did in the early days of all this, you know, I would just go on eBay and buy one. And I know a lot of people are against that and everything, and I understand that, but you know, what can I say? That was the only way for me to get one at the time that I really knew about. And again, even though I mean, it's not like the internet was a new thing back then. I mean, I could have seen who was going to shows, and I could have asked people, I guess, right? But it's just a lot of messaging back and forth, and sometimes I don't have a lot of time for all that. And so yeah, I was paying, and it wasn't such at that point. The lithographs hadn't gotten so crazy yet, so it wasn't such a bad markup on everything. And there were certain sellers who I don't know if they go to every show or if they have someone that goes for them, but certain sellers that seem to have stuff from every show. I don't know how they do it, right? But and so I would kind of they would get to know me from me buying stuff from them, so I would kind of get some deals from them and stuff, right? And I would also get the shirts as well. So that's kind of how what I did in the beginning because it was the only thing I could do. I mean, the only show I went to on this leg was the Seattle show, right? I just couldn't go to the other shows. I would have loved, man, I would have given my probably right hand to be at the Troubadour show, right? You know, right?
Yeah, of
And, and
course.
and not
Absolutely.
even just for the Troubadour show. I would have fucking loved to have gone to that Tower Records, you know, display setup that they had with all the memorabilia. You know me, that would have been like in heaven then, right? You know, but it just wasn't meant to be. So anyway, that's kind of how it was for me in the beginning of all this. I'm just sometimes with my job and everything, I can't go to a lot of the shows I would like to get to. But of course, I would love to get it in person if I can, but it just doesn't happen all the time.
Do you remember what the first lithograph was that you purchased?
That's a good question. Um, well, I can tell you this: I was at the Vegas show, so I definitely purchased those in person. Um,
Okay.
I I'm not sure if I bought the Troubadour show before that or after that. You know, um, because that was a period of flux in my life. I was actually when I went to those Vegas shows, I was actually on like a trip to scout homes and everything in Seattle because I was living in Alaska at the time,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was moving to
Oh, okay.
Seattle. So the government paid for me to go on a house hunting trip to Seattle, right? And I combined that with a personal trip to Vegas to go see these shows. So it was a lot of
Nice.
craziness going on at the time. But I definitely in person was the Vegas lithos, but I might have purchased the Troubadour one on eBay before that. It's possible. Yeah.
Going back to what you were saying about the Troubadour show and specifically the whether they sold the lithograph or gave them away. Again, I wasn't at the show myself, but from what I heard, they were actually for sale.
Oh, okay.
However, you can imagine back then with, first of all, it's April Fools, right? So
Yeah.
that was announced. It was just thrust upon Guns N' Roses fans very suddenly. I don't think that a lot of people purchase them because first of all, the fans that are there are there to see the band in a way that they haven't been for a very, very long time. That's going to be their number one focus. I don't think that too many people would have been, looking at that design and thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to grab that and I'm going to hold this, at the front of the pit for a couple of hours while rocking out to my favorite band in with the three members that haven't been together for the first time in ages. I certainly, if I was there, I would not have picked up that lithograph. It just wouldn't have struck me as something that would be collectible. And exactly what you said, that with this show in Las Vegas, you could understand them doing a special design just for those shows and not continuing with having designs for future shows.
Right.
It certainly wouldn't have struck me as something that they would keep on continuing as a thing for every show on the leg or on the tour.
Right. And I think too
Yeah.
with that Troubadour show, God only knows, and I'm sure they didn't, and they still don't today for most shows. They probably didn't have tubes, right? And not only that, they certainly didn't have early entry, right? So everyone who's getting into that, they want to rush to get as close to the stage as possible, right? And you don't know if the show's going to get rowdy or not. I mean, I understand a lot more fans are older these days, but it still could get rowdy, and you don't want to have that damage. So yeah, I think people, if anything, we're going to wait till after the show. And you know how it is,
Yeah.
even after the show, it's very hot in the venue. You want to get out to the fresh air. You don't want to spend an hour and a half in line to get the goddamn lithograph. So I think a lot of people didn't buy it right when they were there. And
And we've discussed this topic numerous times, that a lithograph, a poster, is not something that is it's not inherently a good concert merchandise item.
right,
It's you go to a concert.
get a shirt,
To me, you get a shirt, right?
yeah.
That's the go-to product.
Maybe a
At
hat.
least when
I don't know, right?
right. For me in high school, the shirt was the thing to have. If you went to a concert on the weekend, it was natural to come to school on the Monday wearing the shirt of the band that you went to go see. Right, that was your way of showing people that you were lucky enough to go. That to me strikes me as a default or a natural type of concert merchandise item.
Right, right,
Posters, for a multitude of reasons, are not the preferred item for many people. But yeah, okay. So moving on from the Troubadour and Las Vegas, you were clearly following the tour day to day. I was not at this age. I'm not quite sure. I can't remember exactly when Guns N' Roses announced that they were going to do a world tour, like start to do shows outside of North and South America. But I was not paying attention to the tour or to the merchandise at this stage. Do you remember, after Vegas and the subsequent shows after that? Did you ever notice that there was a time where the desire for purchasing merchandise or purchasing the lithos in particular ramped up? You were saying that the prices that you paid for some of these lithographs early on was very reasonable. Did you notice a time where all of a sudden, your maybe $75 purchases on eBay were starting to get rare, and all of a sudden you had to pay, $150, $200 or whatever for some of these lithographs?
It's a great question, and yeah, I think so, and I think it was probably sometime in that range of the Kansas City to the Cincinnati shows, right? Because I think most people agree, and no offense to the earlier designs, but that's when we started getting some really spectacular ones, right? And I think a lot of people felt that, maybe even people who aren't GNR fans, right?
Mm.
Because let's face it, some of these things, even if you're not a GNR fan, it's art, right? You know what I mean? So you might like it just for the art itself, even if you're not a GNR fan, and that's fine. So I think around that time is when that started happening, and I think that's when obviously a lot of people started realizing, okay, this is obviously something they're going to be doing going forward, right? And I think a lot more people started getting into collecting around that time, and therefore driving the price up, which is understandable, right? And that's what I noticed personally, and I'm excluding, by the way, the Mexico City lithograph because, as we've talked about before, for some reason, Mexico and Central America and South America stuff doesn't show up on eBay, and I don't know why. The Mexico City one has lately, as you know, but back then it wasn't on there, and I didn't get that one until much later, right? I didn't even know about that one until much later, because another problem that was going on at the time, and still kind of happens even today, and I don't understand why. But I think it's the chaos of when the merchandise booth opens and it's just money's flying everywhere and shirts and shit. No one ever really takes a picture of the merchandise booth, right? And so it was hard to know what was out there, even
From my perspective, I didn't realize how chaotic that sort of situation was, because my first concert for the tour was when they came to Japan, and you probably remember that the weeks leading up to the start of that Japan leg, they actually released all of the merchandise, or they released images of the merchandise online. There was
That was
a
cool.
Japanese
Yeah.
website. Yeah, there was a Japanese website that sort of showed everyone what was going to be available, including, admittedly, the lithograph designs.
Right.
And that, to me, that was my first exposure to the tour. So I thought that was natural. I thought that was normal. But then I learned later on that, yeah, it was not as organized for North America in 2016. That, like you said, that I think people were not able to find out what was available at these merchandise booths until people took photos. And if you don't take a photo, you're not going to know. That
And by
that
the
would have been
way,
very, very crazy.
right, and even if you do take a photo, and as again, we've talked about this before, and I've talked about it with some other people. Even if you take a photo, sometimes different merchandise stands have other stuff. So, like, it would be great actually
Yeah.
if they put the designs of everything online earlier, like the Japan shows did, because this way, now of course, me, I'm a crazy collecting fanatic, so I'm going to definitely buy stuff no matter what. But for the regular person, this way they can look at the design and decide, you know what, I don't want that shirt, or I don't want that poster, so I'm not going to waste an hour and a half in line, or however long it is, right? And I'll just go, or I really do want that shirt, or I really do like that hat, or whatever. I am going to spend an hour and a half in line to make sure I get it. I think it would be cool if they did that, actually.
Even better, I think it would be beneficial for everyone involved at the merchandise booth. That surely everyone's had this experience, right? That you're there standing at the merchandise booth and you're 3 or 4 people deep in line, and the people in front of you are standing there and they haven't decided what they want yet.
Yeah,
You know,
tell me that.
they're
Yeah.
right there and they're umming and eyeing and wondering, should I get this one or should I get this one? Let me, turn that shirt around. Let me have a look at the other side. And if they put the images of this merchandise online prior to the shows, then people can make their decision before they get to the concert. Maybe it would streamline the process of purchasing merchandise.
It would definitely help with that, I think. Yes.
I mean, I understand that with the lithographs, maybe you don't want to release the design of the lithograph early, and I like that. Like, if I'm not too sure if you remember with the Asia Pacific 2018 leg, they did a similar sort of thing where maybe the day before they released like a little cheat sheet where they had pictures of what merchandise was going to be available, but the little section where they had the design for the lithograph was black. It was blacked out, right?
Oh, okay.
And so if you can just imagine, it's just a single sheet of paper, and it's got the prices for all of these merchandise items, and then the little rectangle, the 4x3 rectangle that represented the event poster, the event lithograph, was blacked out, but it would have the price there in the local currency, so people knew that how much it was gonna cost.
Now, do you think
But then
they did that because they wanted to be surprised, or do you think they did that because maybe a because you know how different artists submit different designs and everything? Do you think maybe they hadn't decided on something then, or because
oh
of
no
how
no they definitely
some countries have printing issues, so maybe they didn't want to put the design out for that reason either?
No, definitely they did have it decided, because the day of the concert they would hand out the exact same flyers,
Oh, oh,
but with the lithograph design.
I see.
And at least the concerts that I went to, they actually had the exact same flyer but blown up huge, like 6 foot tall, standing next to the merchandise booths. And the exact same design, but the lithograph was not blacked out. The lithograph design was on that poster. So it was intentional. Absolutely, it was intentional that they wanted people to see what merchandise was available, and specifically what the prices were going to be. But they didn't release the version of the flyer with the pictures, the design of the posters unveiled until the day of the concert. The only exception to this was Hong Kong. Hong Kong was the one stop that was 2 nights, right? They did 2 consecutive shows,
Oh yeah.
and when they released the flyer for day one, it had both designs of day one and day two. So people that were there for the first concert, looking at the flyer for all the merchandise, they could see the design for day one and day two. That's why day two was a little bit chaotic for people that were trying to get the lithographs, because the lithograph collectors had already known for 24 hours what the design was going to look like. So, and it ended up being a really, really good design. And it ended up being a little crazy for people lining up trying to get the lithos.
Oh man.
But that process of showing that merchandise early and hiding the design of the lithograph, I think that would be cool, and if they implemented that would be very helpful for the fans.
Right, absolutely, man. Yeah.
All right. Well, how about this then? How about we go ahead and sort of go through the designs one by one.
Well, real quick, can I ask you something?
Yeah, go for it.
And I know you didn't get into the Japan stuff, which is going to be potentially another episode. But what made you at that point say, you know what? Okay, because there were shows that you were going to, or because just maybe at that point you just said, like, what sparked it for you or whatever? I guess I don't know.
Well, that's interesting. It's a really good question, because when I look back on how it all unfolded, even I'm kind of amazed that I've ended up where I am right now. Like I mentioned before, I was not following the tour for 2016. I really didn't pay attention to it until a few weeks before they were going to start the world tour part of their leg. At the start of 2017, January 2017, they started the world tour, so to speak, in Japan. I know. Yes, they did a South America leg in 2016, but outside of the continental Americas, they started the start of 2017 in Japan. And my hometown concert was the first concert, was Osaka.
Oh.
And so I went online, I think on several forums, trying to, being a typical Guns N' Roses homer, I wanted to find out, what hotel are they staying at? How could I meet them? And,
sure.
And so I went to several Guns N' Roses forums. I think I was, as soon as I purchased my ticket for the Osaka show, I signed up for Night Train, so I was on the Night Train forum as well. And that didn't really pan out. I was looking everywhere trying to get some insider information on where they might be staying in Japan, and absolutely no one had any idea. I won't mention. I did end up finding out where they were staying. I'll keep the secret for that to myself.
Nice.
These sort of trade secrets you don't want to necessarily make public. If anyone wants to know, they can ask me privately, but I won't divulge it on this podcast. But what ended up happening was, spending all that time on the forums, you'd venture into other threads and see what else people were talking about. And the one thing that seemed to be a very popular topic was the lithograph and merchandise thread. And I remember at that time, this was probably a couple weeks or so before the Osaka show, that website, that Japanese website that was showcasing the merchandise that was going to be available, they'd already released those images. So people were able to see what merchandise was going to be available very, very early. And there was a lot of people really jealous, because some of the merchandise that was available in Japan was very, very cool merchandise. It's very, very Japan specific. I think the one thing that one of my friends is still looking for is that concert program, the tour book.
With the
tour
swords.
Program.
Yeah.
With the swords, like the contents are exactly the same, but the cover is different. It's got the crossed samurai swords logo instead of the crossed guns logo, and that's that clearly is something that you're only going to be able to get in Japan, and so there's a few things like that really made fans jealous for the merchandise that was available here, and more importantly, there was some people expressing their surprise that on the website, along with all of that merchandise, sure enough, 2-3 weeks or whatever before the Osaka concert, right there with the hats and the shirts and the tour program was the design for the lithographs. So 2 weeks ahead of the show, everyone knew that what the Osaka design was going to look like. Everyone knew what the Kobe design was going to look like, and they just went nuts. Like clearly we know how great the designs were for Japan, but specifically for Osaka and Kobe. That people were eager, really, really eager, waiting for those designs to show up on eBay, and so I could see that there was a lot of interest in it, and I thought, what? There's 5 other shows in Japan. I'll grab a few spare. I'll trade with the other fans that are going to the other shows, because at that stage, I wasn't planning on going to any other shows. And if I'm lucky, I'll be able to trade for the other Japan lithographs.
Sure.
And so that was the original plan, but I, again, being naive, and it being quite a number of years since I had gone to a Guns N' Roses concert or a concert anywhere nearly as big as that one. I showed up, pretty much when doors opened. I did not go early.
Yep.
And I know that not too many people are going to be familiar with the venue where the Osaka concert was held, but it's at a dome, and the entrance to the dome is sort of elevated. You've got to go up almost like these pedestrian stairs outside of the venue, and then there's a concourse that's an elevated concourse around the dome. And I remember specifically walking up those stairs, and as soon as I got to the top of those stairs, I saw the merchandise tents, and I saw the line of what I'm guessing, like conservatively, was probably 2,000 to 3,000 people in line.
Yep.
And
yep.
I'm going to try not to curse too much on this podcast, but there was 2 words that I said out loud, and I just moved on. It's like, nope, not going to do that. I'm just going to go straight in. So at that stage, I had given up. I wasn't going to get the lithograph. I wasn't going to get any merchandise, because clearly, they're not going to go through those 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people anytime soon. That was a lost cause as far as I was concerned. So I went in, enjoyed the heck out of the show, and when it came time to exiting the venue, like any venue, you can choose one of dozens of exits, usually if it's a large venue, a large dome or a stadium. And it just so happened that the exit that I took dumped me out of the venue right where the mouth of the merchandise tent was.
Nice.
And so I walked out of the stadium. I'm standing essentially 50 yards or whatever from the merchandise tent, and I can see that there's still a couple hundred people in line, but I looked at it and I thought, what, this is going to be okay. I'll see whether they still have it. If the poster is still there, I'll grab some. And I don't think I was in line for long. I think it took me 20 or 30 minutes or so to get to the front. And I think I couldn't see the stack of lithographs, so I had thought that they'd already sold out. But as soon as I asked for one, I saw where they were keeping it, and I saw that they just had a huge stack, right? So I think I ended up getting 5 of them. Again, my theory was that I could trade the other 4 for posters from the other Japan shows.
No, it makes sense, yeah.
And I could also see the way that they had them set up, or at least the way that they had them stacked at the Osaka show. It was one gigantic stack It was very different from the way that they get delivered at other shows that I've been to on the tour, and so I could tell straight away that they were in numerical order, and my number was somewhere around the low 400s, and I was one of the last people, admittedly, to grab them. Most of the people that grabbed them were they grabbed them before the show, or at least before the end of the show. There weren't too many people buying them after me. They did not sell out, but I think also that was, you could probably blame that on the fact that they may have printed too many for Osaka. They printed out 750 for Osaka, which I think is, apart from the original Las Vegas lithographs, I don't think that they've ever made anything even close to that volume.
Right. Yeah.
And so at that stage, yeah, I was in, at least for the Osaka lithograph and the Japan lithos in general. I ended up just purchasing. I met a friend on the Guns N' Roses forum that was happy to just simply buy one from one of the Tokyo concerts for me, and he didn't want to trade. He was happy to just sell it to me for cost price. So I ended up with a leftover Osaka concert poster that I traded to someone in the U.S. And it sort of ballooned from there. We'll get into that when we look at the designs later on.
Right on.
But at that stage, when I grabbed that Osaka lithograph and eventually got the others from Japan, at that stage I was set. Like my original goal was just to have those Japan lithographs. I had no intention of getting any of the others. At that stage, this idea of grabbing them all or making this an obsession that lasts numerous years, that wasn't even a glint in my eye at that stage.
Right. No, man, that's cool.
But as we go through the designs, I'll add some extra information to at least to my story, to show you how I progressed, or you might say progressed. Others might say how I descended into the maelstrom.
Yeah.
How I went from being interested to being obsessed.
No doubt, man. No doubt.
So at this stage, my vision for this podcast is for it to be a podcast, for it to be an audio recording. However, depending on my editing skills, I do have, there is a possibility that I may be able to use my editing skills and some editing software to pair this audio recording with some visuals. Ideally, what I would like to do is maybe come up with a video where the lithograph that we're talking about comes up in the video when we're talking about it, and if I can get that to work, I'll put it back. I'll put it on YouTube or whatever, so people can sort of follow along by watching a video. Otherwise, for other people, if you're just listening to this as a podcast, this audio only, if I screw up and am not able to make the video, feel free to follow along with us. If you open up my website, if you open up Lithorati.com and go to the North America page and open up the first lithograph in that list, the April Fool's Troubadour design, we're going to start with that, and we're going to just go through them chronologically. You can follow along by clicking along with us if you wish. So without further ado, let's go through these.
Let's do it, man.
Are you good to go on your end,
I
Tim?
totally am, man. Yeah. Okay,
so first and foremost, the one that started them all, I guess, the one that nobody saw coming was the Troubadour design, the April Fool's 2016 design. What's your take on it, Tim?
Well, I really like it, and part of the reason is one, it's definitely alternate colors that you don't really see with GNR too much, like the whole black and white scheme, and the black and white. It also helps to make like the roses and the "I was there" really pop on it because it's black and white, right? I mean, I there's a lot of other designs that I really like that have a lot going on in them, but I also tend to like very simplistic, basic designs, and this is one of them. I'm a fan. I gotta
I
say.
think I love it as well. I think that it serves the purpose, right? That maybe at this stage people weren't exactly sure how long this tour was going to go, and what you want is just immediate dramatic effect. You want the Guns N' Roses logo to be front and center. You want it to be huge. You want it to stand out. Having it high contrast, like black and white with the contrast color with the red, I think is a great idea. It serves the exact purpose that it was made for. You especially, I'm a big fan of the Guns N' Roses font. The typeface that they use for April Fool's 2016, Troubadour, West Hollywood,
Oh yeah,
California. I love that. Like I probably sound like a broken record with a lot of my friends when I'm talking about the lithograph designs that sometimes the artists will use a different typeface, a different font for the Guns N' Roses on the lithograph. And I would say, like, no matter how good the design is, like if they do use a non-standard font for that Guns N' Roses type, I I usually say if you change that to the Guns N' Roses font, it would look better.
yeah.
That's how much I love that font. And one other thing I would add about the Troubadour design, how it's black and white with the red as contrast color, is that I'm not a huge comic book fan, but there's a handful of graphic novels that I loved to read when I was younger, and my favorite is Frank Miller's Sin City.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
Frank Miller's Sin City is black and white with the occasional contrast color. It's very pulpy. It's very you know hardcore, hard boiled sort of feel to it, and I love it. That sort of artwork really sings to me, and to see a design like this done in a similar way, like you said, the red really pops. I love it. It's of course it's simple, it's but it's meant to be. And if all the designs were like this, I could imagine it getting a little bit tiring. But as just a one off, I think it's done really well.
And I don't know if you've ever spoken to the artist for this one, and not that I have either, but I mean, I kind of wonder too, because they're playing at the Troubadour, if this design was like kind of like a nod to the flyers back then that they had, because a lot of their flyers were kind of simple, and a
Yeah,
lot of their
yeah.
flyers were kind of beat up like this because people put it in their pockets. Maybe that's why they have that distressed design to it. I kind of wonder if that was part of the influence there.
I'm sure it was. I haven't talked to the artist, but I think especially people that purchased the Locked and Loaded box set, they had some of those reproductions of those old school flyers, right?
Right, right.
They were like this. They were very grainy, very gritty, very much a product of their times, and I'm certain that would have become a factor when it came to designing this one.
Sure.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next one then. Vegas, night one.
Yeah. I mean, I gotta say right off the bat, I think it's a really amazing alternate take on the whole Guns and the Roses, like the actual guns and the actual roses. Instead of being side to
Yes,
side like the classic design is, like they're doing that vertical thing. I think that was brilliant, man.
I think that particular aspect of the design is definitely very, very beautiful. I The only thing I wouldn't say dislike, but the only thing I'm not a huge fan about is that, generally speaking, I'm a little bit more of a fan of, I guess, illustration, like non-realistic illustrations. And when I look at those skulls, they not that they're photorealistic, but they're done in a very detailed, realistic way. And we'll move on to the next Vegas design soon enough. But you'll see that the amount of realism to the skull in this design compared to the next design, I lean towards the other style.
Sure.
So I can certainly see the beauty, and so much so I showed the design to one of my friends who is really, really big into tattoos, and he ended up actually getting this as a tattoo. He got the guns and the roses and the skulls as a tattoo. Because he absolutely loved it, and I don't blame him. That it is, to me, that would probably make for a great tattoo. But when it comes to designs for a lithograph, yeah, I'd like it to be just a little bit more of an illustration rather than I would like it to be a little bit less photorealistic, a little bit less realistic.
And I kind of wonder. I mean, I guess the Vegas references. Well, obviously you have the heart, the club, the spade, and the diamonds, for playing cards, right? But I kind of wonder if the two skulls, especially in between the guns there, if it's kind of implying like gambling in the sense of like Russian roulette, I guess, right? But not that I think you could play that in Vegas anywhere that I know of, but still, like just in the sense of like gambling, I suppose. I guess that's what they're going for here. I don't know, right?
Yeah, but still, I think this was a good start to the artwork. I think it gave people the impression that thought was being put into the designs for these posters.
Right, and and I'll say this: it doesn't sound like it was as bad as your experience in Japan, but I remember because for this show, I mean, I tried. What I like about the Vegas shows is that for the most part, no matter where they're playing, you can usually stay at a hotel that's really, really, really close. And so I pretty much stayed at the closest possible hotel for this one, which was right across the street at the time, and that was the Monte Carlo. And so what I did is, like, I went down, I think, at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And they had like an outside merch area as well for this show.
Okay.
And man, even that, and they haven't even started opening yet. And even at that point, there were so many people in line. And I remember, oh man, it took forever. But the nice thing was I was able to go back to my room and just drop all the stuff off there, right? And then go and make it to the show. But yeah, it was, even at this point, it was crazy for the lines. But I don't think it was because people had like lithograph fever at that point. I think it was just people were excited for these guys are back together, and they just wanted to see what merch there was, right? You know what I mean? And
I think it was just Guns N' Roses fever rather than just lithograph fever.
Oh yeah. And this was the first show that I realized after I bought the stuff. Obviously, later on, I went into the venue, right? And that's when I saw that they had different stuff at different venues, different merchandise tables, man. Like Okay. And fortunately, it was nothing that I wanted. Thankfully, that worked out. But still, I can understand that could be quite frustrating for a lot of people. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, man.
One thing that we should point out too is like these two Las Vegas designs. They printed 1,000 each of these designs. Do you remember what was the venue capacity of those Vegas shows?
Man,
I'm guessing it was obviously an arena show, so I'm guessing it's probably around about 15 to 20,000, right?
Yeah, I mean it was an arena show, but like but they played like at one end of it instead of like in the round, as they call it, right? So so there were certain seats that weren't sold, like the ones that are behind the stage or whatever, right?
Right.
But still, yeah, I would have to think that number is probably pretty accurate. So I mean, when we think about it, even though they're making 1,000 of these, in the grand scheme of things, that's still, like, I mean, if everyone wanted one, it still would have been very rare and hard to get. But thankfully, not too many people want them, I guess, or maybe they didn't want, maybe they don't like the price of them. Hard to know. Or like you said, they don't want to deal with carrying it around, or whatever the reason is, right? These weren't so hard to get, or these weren't so costly, thankfully, right? For
I
people.
think, like I think if you go on eBay right now, every now and again, like, I don't think a month goes by where these Las Vegas lithos don't show up for, I think that
absolutely, yeah, right.
With 2020 hindsight, with the perspective that we have, nearly 4 years on from these dates. We if we could have told them that you should print out 1,000 for every show.
Oh no.
I think that the value, at least the cost to get some of these lithos post concert would not be as bad as it is now.
Oh,
It
absolutely
certainly
right.
would not be as expensive as they are now. Like I said, you could still get these from time to time on eBay, and they don't go for that much. Like probably somewhere between $100 and $150 at the time of this recording. But it's been like that for several years now. I remember grabbing, when I had to sort of go through the back catalog and buy the 2016 lithos for my collection. I went on eBay, and I think I probably spent $110 or whatever, and the price has not really changed 3 years on from that.
Right. Yeah, it hasn't. Right.
So you can just imagine if they'd printed out 1,000 for every single show, these things would be on eBay, and regardless of whether you want this or you want something that's really popular, you'd probably the difference between the cheap lithographs and the expensive lithographs probably would be nowhere near as wide or as large as it is now.
Right. Yeah, I think so too. Right. I mean, absolutely,
But
man. Yeah.
but I'm guessing that they printed out 1,000 because it was a nice round number. You have no idea at that stage. You've got no sort of statistics to go, merchandise statistics to go by. You've got no idea how successful or how much these posters are going to sell. So they only printed out 1,000 of them. They printed out 1,000 of them as a arbitrary number, and they've clearly adjusted those figures afterwards, because we've never seen numbers that high ever since.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not at all, man.
Yeah. So okay, so let's move on to the next one. Let's go to Vegas 2.
All right.
So this is the first foray for our great artist Arian Bueller.
Yeah, man.
This is probably, I'm guessing, the one that sort of lit the fire for the lithos. This, as you can see, the style of artwork that Arian does, specifically with the skull, this type of illustration is what is more my style compared to Vegas 1. And yeah, I certainly prefer this illustration over Vegas 1. I think this maybe started a little trend, or not so little trend, of having small, subtle references hidden in the design. So I kind of like that. I'm a big fan of having little things hidden around the place. I like this way that they make it look like the streets of Vegas, and these neon lights are the information for the venue and the date, and having the GNFNR logo spray painted across the street. These are cool things, little things that add detail to make the designs really cool to me.
Right. And I think it's cool too. How for this design anyway, they usually like the gun and the rose, those are connected, right? Like both of them,
Yes.
but they separated them like to left and right like that. I think that's pretty neat. Definitely different. And I always like different stuff. I think that's. I mean, I know it doesn't always work out for design wise, but I like that people take a chance by doing something different, and I think that's what happened here. And yeah, I think it's like you said, his first, knocking it out of the park for Bueller, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I love it, and it is luckily one of the few 2016 designs that people can still reasonably that can find on eBay or on the forums. They still are around for sale, and they're not prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on
Sure.
to Coachella. Okay, so your thoughts, Tim?
I think, and again, I'm not, no offense to the artists. I don't know if they're ever going to hear this or not, right? I mean, as you know, it's all a matter of perspective. One man's trash is another man's treasure, all that. And I'm not saying this is trash, but to me, it's like a very like they just took the background mountains and all they did was slap on the robot and the GNR logo and that was it, right? And then the information on the bottom. Um,
Yeah,
so like I'm gonna
and
say
that's
not
the
very
official.
inspired, right?
That's the official. That's the official Coachella font, right,
Oh
or
yeah,
logo.
yep, yep.
So, to me, that like, I mean, in terms of design, I mean, I don't have anything against it, but when I look at that, I see, it almost feels like it's just copy and paste, right? Like
Well,
they've
exactly, right.
they've copy and pasted the Coachella logo. They've copy and pasted the artwork from Appetite for Destruction, and then they've copy and pasted the Guns N' Roses Bullet logo. And I like the color. I like the the idea, so to speak. Like you look at the way that they've positioned the artwork, and it's not bad. But at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like that there's anything wholly original in the design.
Right, and and who knows what the history is here, and you probably know more than most people. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe they had an awesome design that for some reason got jacked up at the last minute, and this is what they had to do. I mean, who knows, right? But
Well, it certainly wouldn't be the only time, right? Like there
right,
there have been other
right,
situations where they had another design lined up and it didn't work out.
you know,
So that could be a possibility. Again, this is an artist that I haven't talked to about it. Again, I really want to I really want to stress that I don't hate it. I just think that it's a little underwhelming. It serves again. It's just it serves a purpose.
right, and what's interesting about the Coachella this weekend and the second weekend right off the bat, right? It didn't take long. We start to get into weird numbering schemes, right? Like for this one, it's
Right.
250, but the second weekend's only 150, and we'll talk about that when we get to it. But I don't know if that they thought less people were coming to the second weekend. I don't know what the reason is for that, But
Yeah.
I mean, at least for Vegas, you had 1,000 the first night, 1,000 the second night. Why there wasn't 250 the second weekend, or why there wasn't 150 the first weekend, who the hell knows, man?
It may end up being a mystery for the ages, sadly.
Right, another GNR mystery, man. Right,
But
um,
let's move on.
yeah.
Yeah, let's move on. Next one is the the design that for quite a while I believe was almost a myth. I think
Yep,
that
yeah.
I think up until at least up until 2017, even once I had started getting into the collecting lithographs, I was going through the motions of grabbing or completing my 2016 collection, and I think somewhere along the line, I had to add this to my list of ones to get because up until then, I didn't even know whether it actually existed
Yeah, right. And
because I think I'd seen the design, like a very very tiny image of it
I remember that.
in.
Yes, I remember that design. That image you're talking about. I mean, yep.
Yeah, like some
Right.
guy had sort of done a collage of all of the or a lot of the lithograph designs, and this was sort of off in one quarter. But no one, I certainly hadn't seen the actual poster itself, and I think at that stage I had just sort of assumed that, maybe it was, an advertising image that was put up on a website somewhere, and someone thought that it was a poster, and they've just put it in with all of the others. The one thing for me that made me think that was that red text over the date that says sold out. To
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
that seemed really strange. Like that they don't really do that, right? Like they like
That is
this is
weird.
this is a design that would have been come up that they would have created weeks before the show. Okay, maybe they were sold out by then, but adding it to the design just seems a little a little awkward. For me, that screams. Remember back in the 80s and 90s, you used to have those commercials on TV where, like, for a monster truck rally, and the announcer would say to you something like, we'll sell you the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge.
Yeah, yeah.
Having this thing stamped, this writing stamped over the top of the date saying "sold out," it just seemed very strange. It didn't seem official to me, and so without knowing anyone that actually had the poster, not knowing, never seeing anything other than that tiny image in the collage. I went months before realizing that it was actually an official poster.
Well, and another part of the problem with all these kind of designs, right, is that and when it's hard to know what's official and what's unofficial, again, like we talked about previously, people not taking pictures of the merchandise table, right, but also, in addition to that, there's a lot of fans who make their own designs for shows, and that's cool and all, right? But it's hard to know if it's real. And sometimes, as you know, I'm not sure about other countries, but definitely Europe and definitely United States. Sometimes, like Live Nation or other organizations make their own posters as well, and so it's hard to know. Okay, is this a show lithograph or just like an independent one-off thing that Live Nation or whoever did? And so it's very hard to know that sometimes.
I at the time I agree. I was thinking the exact same thing that you just mentioned there. That it was impossible to tell at the time whether it was like a fan made design or Live Nation commission design. Now, with what we know now, however, the one thing that I was able to tell that I didn't know back then was that the Live Nation designs, if you've ever paid attention to them, I don't collect the Live Nation commission stuff, but I have seen quite a few of the designs. None of the Live Nation designs have got Guns N' Roses imagery. Like, they don't use the bullet logo. From memory, I don't think they even use the Guns N' Roses font.
That's a good point. Yeah,
they seem to utilize other fonts, and they'll design something, and even though it says Guns N' Roses, it doesn't use any of that official imagery. And so when I saw this, with that, eventually once I found that information about the Live Nation commission stuff, I looked back on this design and thought, look, it's definitely not Live Nation. It might be fan created, but it's definitely not Live Nation. But it did take me a while before I realized that it was official. Did I ever tell you how I realized it was official?
I don't think you have for this one.
What what ended up happening was somebody posted. No, what ended up happening was I was on a Facebook group somewhere, and I think it must have been like the 1 year. I'm guessing it was the 1 year or 2 year anniversary of the show, and I think Facebook maybe does like a memory post or something like that. Like when you log into Facebook, it says, remember this memory from 1 year ago. Remember this memory from. Remember this post that you did from 2 years ago.
Oh yeah.
And so somebody had something like that pop up on their Facebook timeline, and it was a video of somebody. It was a YouTube video of somebody at the Mexico City shows at the Mexico City show, walking around doing a review of the merchandise outside of the stadium.
Oh, right? Okay, I've seen that video. And by the way, that's another reason why it's hard to tell, because there's so much bootleg stuff sold at those shows, right? But anyway, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, right.
No. And so I watched the video. I think the one thing that drew me in was simply that it was a very windy day, and so you could see this guy struggling to sort of to talk over the wind, and you could see all this merchandise in the background. Most of it bootleg, all of it at that time in the video was all bootleg merchandise, and it was flapping in the wind. And maybe a couple minutes into the video, he sort of turns the corner, and there, sure enough, is the official merchandise tent with everything flapping in the wind.
Oh,
And
nice.
in the background, for like 10 seconds, you could see this poster hanging up in the background of the official Guns N' Roses merchandise tent at Mexico City, flapping away in the wind.
That's cool, man. Yeah.
As soon as I saw it, it's like, okay, well then it exists. It's official. Like I could tell right there and then that it was sold as a poster at the and it was official merchandise, and I had to add it to the list.
I was gonna say, it's a bittersweet moment, right? Because you're like, okay, I've confirmed it, but it's like, damn, another one I need to track down and get now.
Yeah, well, but the thing is, I think I was most happy because it almost felt like a CSI scene.
Nice.
You're looking at evidence, and all of a sudden, some key piece of evidence pops out at you, and that's what it felt like to me. That no one like how many hundreds of people that I'd met through the course of collecting these lithos, and nobody had one. Nobody could answer the question. Even the people that said, okay, I went to the show, but I didn't see it. No one could confirm its existence. And then just, if I had been drinking something while I was watching that video, I would have done that spit take as soon as I saw it. It was very shocking for it to suddenly come out. But
Right.
but in terms of design, again, it's simple. It's very similar in layout to the Troubadour.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
what I really like about it, I will admit, I am a fan of it being written in Spanish. I think it is really, really cool.
You know, a couple of things. One, I totally agree about the similarity to the Troubadour design. Two, I kind of wonder if it's got this kind of like gritty feel to it because of you know, like whenever you watch like I don't know how I would describe it. Like kind of like whenever you see like a movie or a TV show and it's showing like a scene that's supposed to be in Mexico, but like in like a desert environment or like a western kind of vibe, and it's kind of got like that yellow kind of texture to it, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of got that too. This thing, like it's trying to like it's been hung for a while and it's baked in the sun a little bit, right? And it's starting to tear. And I think that's cool. And like you're right, the fact that it's in Spanish, I think is really cool, especially. And I didn't notice this until like we were talking about it right now. I don't know how, but the pistolas y rosas part, right? Because I'm imagining that most Spanish speakers, right? When they say Guns N' Roses, they probably say they're speaking Spanish, and they probably just say Guns N' Roses. I don't think they say
Right.
pistolas y rosas, but still, I like the fact that they put that there. I think that's really cool. And that's why I like too. Whenever I collect like CDs or cassettes or vinyls from countries where they speak Spanish. I love it when the song titles are in Spanish. Like I love that kind of shit. So yeah, I think that's really cool. Right.
Very, very cool. I think it definitely gives off that vibe that you described. That it does seem like it's it might be a wanted poster stuck on the outside of the town jail in a spaghetti western or something like that.
Right. You know what I mean?
It definitely has that vibe. Very, very cool. If you're going to have a very simple design, you would want it to be like this. It's simple, but it's very, very cool.
Yeah, man. I agree.
Okay. Well, shall we move on to the next design?
Sure.
Okay. So this one is very, very controversial, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because and don't get me wrong, like even if you could argue that even with the Troubadour design, they're using an old logo, so they're kind of referencing their past, right? But especially with this design, they're referencing their past, but it kind of makes sense to reference the past. I mean, it was Slash and Duff are back in the band, and again, that's no disrespect to Melissa or Frank or anyone else, right? But it is what it is, and I've always kind of wondered, although I guess you'd have to ask the artist, right? If that middle finger there, if that's like a middle finger to Steven and Izzy, especially because they're not like displayed here, or if that's just like, that could be a reference to like, when they're saying it's so, it's so easy, right? When they get to the part where they're like,
Yeah.
F off, right? And he gives the middle finger to the crowd. So it's hard to know what that middle finger is, and it could just be a middle finger. It doesn't have to mean anything, of course, right? But although what's interesting is that it looks like the hand has rings on it. So I don't know if that's supposed to be Axel's hand or unclear on that, right? Like you see the rings
Yeah, I'm
there,
not quite sure about that.
right?
The
But
it definitely is wearing it definitely is wearing two rings, isn't it?
right, yeah. One's like a, I think like a skull ring, and one's like a,
Yep,
like maybe a big like
jewel or
yeah, some
something.
kind of jewel, right? You know. So yeah, hard to know, you know. But I always liked it, you know. Again, um, simplistic, you know, right? But and I think against the background, it pops, you know, and I like that.
Mm.
Um, I could tell you that
The,
I had a hard time tracking down the shirt for this one, right? But you know,
did you find one though? Did they
yeah,
actually make one?
I found one, and Coachella Weekend one was even harder actually to get the shirt, but this
Oh,
one
okay.
too, right? Yeah, I did find one. And you know, I'm a fan of it. What do you think?
Well, I mean, to me, it's okay. It doesn't blow me away. But what makes me a little bit more apprehensive about liking it is that I know the controversial origin of the design. I'm not too sure whether you've heard the story or not, but the original design, the original concept of this idea of the cross, the appetite for destruction cross, with the middle finger holding it, actually came from a fan design. There was a lot of controversy, apparently, in the GNR fan community at the time when this came out, because a lot of the fans knew that the cover, sorry, the design had been ripped off of a fan's a fan's design. A fan
Oh, I
had a
see.
fan had done a fan had done this appetite for destruction cross with only slash duff and axle, and with the skull sort of holding the cross and giving the middle finger, and it had essentially been, the concept of it was really lifted for this design. And so apparently, again, I wasn't following the designs at the time, but from what I've been told by a lot of people who were, is that when the design came out, there was a lot of pushback from Guns N' Roses fans who had seen the original, and clearly you could see. I mean, it's not a perspective thing where you look at the original and think, oh yeah, there's similarities. I mean, the layout is the same. It's literally the appetite for destruction cross with the skeleton hand holding the middle finger. But the rumor is that someone along the line, somewhere in merchandise management, I suppose, saw the design, thought it was cool, and decided, you know what, we're gonna go with that. And I don't know who the artist was. I know that there's one woman. I think she's based in Europe, who does a lot of her own Guns N' Roses artwork.
Oh,
I don't
right.
know whether it's her, but she's the only one that comes to mind. But yeah, there was clearly a previous fan created artwork that this was based on, and that's why some people don't particularly like it, because they never gave any kudos to the original artist, and clearly, she or he never got paid for the idea.
Well, that's pretty. Yeah, I. That's all kind of ringing a bell now. You know, that you brought that up again, right? You know, and if true, it's pretty messed up, right? You know,
Yeah,
although that brings up a very interesting point that you have. And there was a time, I don't know if you remember this. They were having people submit designs for like a GNR poster contest or something, right? You know, and some of those designs are pretty goddamn impressive, right? You know, and I think it would
very
be it
impressive.
would be
Yeah,
cool. Imagine doing a whole leg and you have like it's all fan designs, right? You know, now I know you get into the problem of like, well, how much are you going to pay them and whatever, right? And to that I say, pay them the same pay you pay all these other artists, right? You know, what's the difference, right? You know,
well, one idea that I had was that you could go that route with South America 2016, because South America 2016, they didn't have lithograph designs, and it seems to be this weird gap in in the lithograph history.
Right.
Every other leg had designs except for South America 2016. If you really wanted to, you could go back, and even though it's 4 years later, you could get fans to submit artwork for those cities that were missed out on, and you fill the void. You're reaching out to your fans, and you get to. I would assume they would get to make a small amount of money off of it as well. So to me that would be a win-win-win. That would be one way to that you could sort of fill the void of South America 2016. And clearly, like you said, I think it was last year when they did that competition where you could submit
Right.
a design to Guns N' Roses. Clearly, they have the ability to do that. Whether they're interested in doing that, I'm not quite sure. I would think it would be a good design. I think it would be a good idea. But it would certainly be better than ripping off a fan's design.
Well, right,
and not giving them credit.
right, and don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to take any work away from the artists who currently work on the lithos. I'm not trying to take food out of their mouth or anything, but I just think it would be a cool way to involve the fans in a lot of this stuff. And speaking of the 2016 Central and South America dates, what's really weird is that the last 2 days of that leg were Mexico City, right? And you did a lithograph from Mexico City before. Why didn't you do it this time? That's very strange, right?
Yeah.
Another GNR mystery, man. Right? But
maybe the way that I'm thinking, like you've got a copy of the Mexico City, the one between the two Coachella dates,
right?
And you can see it's obviously just standard paper. It's poster paper. It's not lithograph thickness,
right? Yeah.
I'm guessing maybe they had trouble. Yeah, they were not happy with the quality control or the options that were available the first time that they went to Mexico City. So then when the South America leg came around, it's like, you know what, we're just gonna forget the whole idea. It's just too difficult. That might have been the reason.
That could very well be it. And one last comment regarding this Coachella Weekend 2 design. You see where it says GNFNR?
Yes.
I don't know, something about me, maybe it's like an OCD thing about symmetry or whatever. I think I might prefer if that was like under the cross, between the cross and where it says April 23rd, 2016, or if it was like under April 23rd, in the middle, but like centered in the poster. You know what I'm saying, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. In fact, what I would have, if it was me,
or up top.
I mean, this is.
I don't know, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I would have done. That I would have put GNFNR up the top as big as possible. And if you go back to the Coachella Night 1, you're using that Coachella logo, but much, much smaller at the bottom.
Yep.
I think that would have looked better. But one last thing I want to say about this is that I'm even though I mentioned that thing about the fan artists being having their design ripped off. I don't want that criticism to be directed towards the artist, because the way that I heard the story was that the artist who did this design is an in-house artist, and he was just simply given instructions by upper management, that it was someone higher up on the totem pole that saw the design and said, you know what, I want us to use that design, and so I have no idea whether the artist who did this, like the actual artist who did this design for the lithograph, even saw the original. But I know that the guy who decided, I don't know. I was told that the guy who decided that we're going to go with this design, please copy this fan's idea. He was someone higher up the totem pole. So.
Very interesting.
So I think that this artist may not have known that they were copying a previous design. He may have just been told, you know what, just how about you do the Appetite for Destruction cross with a skeleton hand holding it and giving the finger, and he just came up with that with no idea.
Right, so. Right.
Which wouldn't be the first time, like especially with in-house artists, they get their instructions from the powers that be, and they pump out what they're asked to pump out, and it's no fault of their own. They could be oblivious to what's really happening. When outside of the room.
Oh, understandable. Yeah.
Anyway, enough about that. I mean, it's not a bad design. I like it. Props to the original fan artist. I apologize that I don't know who you are. If you want to make yourself known, or if you know who the artist is, please drop me a line. I would like to know who it was who originally came up with the layout. Okay, so shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so this is another Arian Bueller, Detroit. I'm not really a fan. I think I think the problem for me is that when I was a kid, I wasn't really into comic books, probably because there was probably a 6 to 12 month period in my life where I was into comic books, but the only comic books that I sort of had access to were really crappy comic books, like very, very thumbed through secondhand copies of Archie and Jughead and some Marvel or DC comics of superheroes that I'd never heard of before. And I think I had developed an aversion towards really comical, cartoony sort of designs. And so when I look at the car, I see the very comical looking car design, and it just doesn't really do anything for me. But I know people who will adamantly disagree with me and say that it's one of their favorite designs. So, it to each their own.
Well, and I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm completely in agreement with you that I know it's a Bueller, and I understand that, and I know he's a very popular artist with the Junior lithographs and everything. But for me, this design, pretty weak, And other than the Skyline and the Corvette, I mean, not really much of a reference either. Although you can say that about other lithographs as well, but still, I don't know. I know you've. And I don't think I'm like spilling any secrets here or anything, but I know you talk with this artist once in a while, or message him or whatever you want to call it. Did you ever talk about this design and what did they say?
I don't think so. I think the time that I have to speak or to interact with Arian is very limited. And if I am lucky enough to have a conversation with them, usually I focus on the designs that I love.
Sure.
So I don't think that we've ever really discussed Detroit. One thing I might add, though, the one friend who does like it, the one thing that he said that he thought was pretty cool about the design was to essentially see the bullet in 3D, to see it in a different perspective, and that was kind of interesting to work with, and I'll agree with that you definitely see it from a different point of view, and you're reminded that it is a bullet, it's not a circular design, it is the back of a bullet,
right?
So that's cool. I like that aspect of it. It's not it's certainly not terrible. It's just that there's no parts of it that appeal to me specifically. Like for me, I'm also not a fan of yellow and orange as a combination, as a pairing. So that was never going to work with me to begin with. But yeah, it's not awful. Like I think if we continue doing these episodes, we'll eventually get to those designs that what we're talking about, that they're not exactly very good. And this Detroit design is still light years ahead of those. So,
yes, it is.
We'll we don't have to say much more than that.
Well, and another quick little thing, and again, no offense to Arian, but
we're gonna be saying that a lot. Like, no offense to the artist, no offense to the artist. And the thing is, it's so true. Like look, I don't know about you, but I don't think I've got that much of an artistic bone in my body. You know, I don't think
Oh, same
I could
here.
come up with
Yeah.
not at least not since I was about 10 years old. You know, I used to be able to sketch when I was a little kid, but I never progressed very far. So it's not like I could produce anything better. But
Well,
when you've got other designs to compare it to,
yeah.
there's a lot of the other designs I like better than this one.
That's the thing, right? And so understand that, and so no offense to Arian, and also number two, I'm not like the world's most, you know, qualified car expert or anything, right? But I don't think I've ever seen a Corvette with wheels that are that wide. You know what I mean? Like fat wheels like
Yeah.
that, right? You know,
Well,
on
I'll
trucks and
give it
stuff,
that just
maybe.
because it's meant to be cartoony, right?
That's true. That's true. Right. Right. Right on, man.
Yeah. So okay, let's move on to one of my favorite designs.
Yeah, I like this one too.
Next.
Right. You know.
Yeah. Well, go for it. Let me know what do you think of DC?
I mean, again, I think it was. I mean, it's clear what it's referencing to me anyway, right? And I think to most
Yes.
people. Um, and and again, and this is going to be another time I'll say no offense to the artist, but a relatively simplistic design, but totally works. For this show, I think. And I like the all seeing eye there. Right, that they put in there. You know, I think it's really cool.
I love it. I really do. This was actually one of the first lithos that I purchased on eBay.
Oh,
I remember that after I started once I got motivated to look at the other designs other than the Japan designs, I went on eBay and saw what was available. This was one of the handful that were available, and it jumped out at me as one of the designs that I really really liked. So yeah, I think it may have been the third or the fourth design in total that I purchased off of eBay. I love the concept. I love how it's executed. The only thing that would have been a little bit cooler for me, and no, sorry, let me rephrase that. What would have made it even cooler was if they had found some way to make the edges, or if they could have made the edges mimic like real damage, or make it look tattered on the edges.
oh, that would have been cool. Yeah, yeah.
Because if you I don't know whether you've seen it, but like Nine Inch Nails, I think the Emick, the artist, did a Nine Inch Nails concert poster that was done on what looks like on film on a film reel. Like it's made out of that cellulose.
I saw the one
And
that you or that someone posted in the MyGNR
yeah, yes.
forum there. Yeah.
If they can make a concert poster like that, where the left side and the right side had holes cut out of it to make it look like a film reel, then anything is possible if you try hard enough, right? When it comes to giving some unique aspect, or sorry, giving a unique element to your poster design. I think that it would have been really, really cool somehow, even if it was just die cut, like even if they just sort of given it some lumpy edges or something. I thought it would have been even cooler. But as is, it's still very, very nice. I'm a big fan of designs that have a very clear parody or a reference to some other type of artwork, and as soon as I look at that, I can clearly see it's meant to be designed or meant to reference the design of U.S. currency.
Yeah, and I like the fact that, well, one, it's a very, you know, it's a rare color scheme that you see for GNR lithographs, right? Like green and like
Yeah,
gold, and I like the fact that it says "In GNR We Trust." I think I like that.
yeah.
Right? You know what I mean?
I think, like I was thinking, it's a little bit strange that they have that green color with the sort of yellowish, discolored look of the paper. I I wonder whether I would have liked it better if it had been a little bit more cleaner, like if it didn't look rust colored, if it was
Ah,
just
ah,
maybe if it was dirt as opposed to stains.
right.
make it look a little bit more like a dollar bill, it would, maybe it might appeal to me more, because that is a little bit of a strange combination, right? The dark green and the rusty sort of orangey yellow.
Yeah, the rust part is weird. Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. But nevertheless, I loved it enough to make it one of my first purchases. So yeah, it's great.
Nice, man. Yeah. Yep.
And next one, let's move on to Kansas City.
Here we are.
I I don't mind the concept, but I feel like it could have been executed better. I how do I put this? Like, there's a very famous livery for a Porsche race car from, I think, the 70s, and the livery, the design of that race car, the paint scheme that they put on that race car, is so famous that it's even got its own name. They call it the Pink Pig, and it's done to imitate a chart displaying where various cuts of meat come from a pig. So if you ever look up the phrase Porsche Pink Pig on Google, you'll see these race cars.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, you'll see, and do this at home if you're listening. If you want, you go open up another tab and look up a Google image for Porsche Pink Pig, and you'll see these race cars come up, and they're it's a pink car, but the design on the car, the paint scheme, it's got these dotted lines separating or showing where different cuts of meat come from the body of a pig, and to me that is very, very famous. It's an iconic image for Porsche racing, and I'm a big Porsche fan. So I think if the idea of a Kansas City barbecue had been done in a similar sort of way, that would have been really, really cool. I think that would have been maybe a better execution of this idea. But the idea of barbecue in general, Kansas City barbecue, is not inherently a bad one. Like that's you want a little bit of variety when it comes to your themes, and I think that would have been really, really cool. The other thing I like about the design is if you see the design in person, the paper, or at least the white parts of the paper, the what it's intended to look like. It looks like the old style butcher's paper, the paper that the butcher used to wrap your meat in when you went to go buy meat from a butcher, back 1,000 years ago,
Right, right.
when we were still young. And I thought that was also something that was very cool. However, there's no texture to it. It's just the design. I would have liked if the paper had if the paper had been textured to mimic butcher's paper. That would have been really, really cool. There's a design later on in 2018 or 2017, 2017, from Boston, and so the texture, the paper's got texture. It's actually a textured paper. It's not a smooth. It's not gloss. It's not matte. It's actually a textured paper. And I loved it. And I thought, damn, why aren't more designs utilizing different paper stock? I would have thought this design would have worked really, really well for that idea.
That actually would be really cool, and I'm not sure why they didn't do that, because they could have easily with this one. But I will say this: this is like a top 5 for this leg of the tour for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like the design. I like, and one of the things I like about it too, it reminds me of this. I went to school in Boston, and there was this restaurant there, and when the placemat at the restaurant was like a picture of the cow, and it would say where different parts came from, and I loved it. Okay. So it reminds me of that, and that restaurant's sadly gone now, and I think it's a great reference to the location where they're playing, and you've got the arrowhead for the nose, which is like the name of the stadium where they're playing, and yes. I just think it all, I think it works really well. I was floored when I saw this one, I gotta say. You know what I mean, right? I really was.
It took a while for me to like it, but I think it is underrated. I think that I didn't give it its dues when I first saw it, but I appreciate it. I like it. It's not top 10 for me, but it is a good design.
And it's also like, um, I guess you could call it one of the more for this lake, one of the more brighter designs, which, as you know, some people are into, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You know.
okay.
So yeah, yeah. For me,
And
I
it's
love it.
classy. It's not cluttered in terms of layout. You've got very clean cut, very classy text at the bottom there. I think it's done. It's done with a level of class. I
Yeah,
like it.
that's a good way of phrasing it. Right. Yeah. To
Okay.
Chicago.
Yes, please.
All
Let's
right.
go. Okay. What do you think?
Well, I gotta tell you, for this one, um, well, I'll just talk about this one for now. Uh, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's like a, a piece of junk or anything, but I don't like it. You know what I mean? Again, I don't get me wrong. I get it. I mean, I understand you got the city skyline in the back. I understand the gangster reference to Chicago in the past, especially with the Tommy gun, machine gun. I mean, I understand it and all. I just, although it has a cool color scheme, I'll give it that. In my opinion, I think it does. But other than that, I'm not a fan of this one, man.
Okay, well, it's funny that I think my opinion on it might be the exact opposite
Oh well,
to
yeah.
you. Uh, I I I will admit I didn't like it when I first saw it, uh, but maybe back then I was, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, I was young and naive, and I think I only saw poor quality photos of it. Like it was just a glancing, tiny, grainy image that I saw of it. And if you remember, I mentioned that I'm not a big fan of sort of orangey red and yellow
Oh
as a color
right, right.
combination. So it's just seeing it out of the corner of my eye, I wasn't drawn to it just because of the color scheme. So at first, yeah, I didn't like it, and but what has happened over time is that it has definitely grown on me. So it's yeah, I like it now, but it did take time for me to like it.
Right.
One other aspect of the design. What's your take on the Guns N' Roses bullet logo being obscured in some posters? This is like the first of many designs that we'll see over the years, and I'm sort of on the fence about it. On one hand, having it appear like diegetically, makes it feel natural and not tacked on. It makes it feel like it's part of the scenario. Like clearly here, it's meant to, either I'm guessing either be the sun or the moon.
That's what I was thinking too. Right.
Judging by the color, I would assume that it's the sun, but who knows? But it's clearly meant to be one of those two. So it's meant to be part of the scene. But if it gets obscured too much, you might not be able to tell that it's a GNR logo. And I think that if something gets obscured like that, the GNR logo loses its effect.
And that is kind of weird that, and especially the word roses, right, is
Yeah,
almost
yeah.
completely obscured here. I never really thought about that before, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, people who at the show, they know what band they're going to see, but still, it is kind of strange, right?
Mm,
I'm surprised they're okay with that. Actually, the band, or the management or whatever, right?
yeah.
But yeah, I guess they didn't mind. Apparently, you know.
Mm. But if we move on, let's move on to the next one. And the same thing happens in Chicago Night 2, right? We'll go to
Oh
Chicago
yeah, it
Night 2.
does. Yeah.
And again, you've got two instances, not just one instance, but two
Oh, the
instances.
background too. Yeah, look at that. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the background and the Tommy gun both have the Guns N' Roses logo partly obscured. And, it sort of made me think at what point, like if you're going to obscure it that much, at what point do you just decide, maybe it's better off, we don't need to put it in like that.
Right. Right.
And but generally speaking, with Chicago Night 2, again, I definitely like the idea, the reference to Chicago's gangster history. It's a good theme. but I'm not a fan of the comic book style. Again, this sort of style to me, again, reminds me of those really crappy Archie and Junkhead comic books. The one thing that for some reason I can't get it out of my mind when I look at this design, I think of these low grade copies of Phantom comic books that I had as a kid. They had these the font that they used for the Phantom reminds me of the font that they're using here for Guns N' Roses, and yeah, just it reminds me too much of that. So on a personal level, I'm not a fan, but the gangster theme is cool.
You know, I guess one of the things I don't like about it, and this might not be, it's, I don't know if the artists for night 1 and 2 communicate with each other, so I don't know how all that works. But I mean, the fact that you already have the gangster reference in one, I wish they would have put it in the next one as well.
Yeah. Okay.
But I totally hear what you're saying about the comic thing, and I think maybe that's why as a kid I never got into comics, because I couldn't stand like I don't know, like the sometimes shoddy artwork or whatever, like or the shoddy design, whatever it is about it. I think I'd be. And even graphic novels, I don't know why I never got into those, because I definitely like the art in those a lot better. But yeah, and also like the part where the clip for the gun is, where the one GNR bullet logo is, right? It kind of seems like that was an afterthought, and it doesn't. It looks kind of shoddy, right? You know what I mean? Like, I think that could have been done a little bit better. And you can't even see like the S in guns, right? Like don't wrong. I understand it's obscured, but it looks like they didn't even put the S in guns there, though, right? Like, I mean, it's
I'm
really
wondering.
It's weird.
Like, I'm trying to wonder which Guns N' Roses logo was first. Did he think, okay, I'm gonna make it the spotlight, and then think, oh, you know what, I can put it on a Tommy gun as well, or vice versa? Did he think, oh, you know what, I'm gonna put the Guns N' Roses logo on the Tommy gun? Oh, wait a minute, I can put it on the spotlight as well.
Right, right.
Yeah, not quite sure.
And I kind of like the roses in the gun barrel, because like, it's kind of like a reference.
I like that. Yeah,
a bit of a historical reference, and also a bit of a reference to like Shepard Fairey, like the artist a little bit, like
there's another design. The London Night 2 from 2017 also has a rose sticking out from the rifle.
Right. Yes.
So
yes.
I like it. I think it's very, very cool. That's a cool little touch to add to the design.
But I would say overall, another one of my least favorite from this leg.
Yeah, me too. I do like the stipple, the intentional stipple effect to make it look like those old school comic books.
That is cool, actually.
But I'm just not really overall. I'm just not really a fan of this design.
Right.
Let's move on then to the big one.
Yeah, to one of the most expensive ones to try to find for that leg. That's for damn sure. And not only expensive, but expensive for a reason, because it's a great design. I think it's one that's a favorite for most people. I don't know what it is that I like about this one, but I can't. It's hard for me to put it in words, but I love it. What can I say? Another top. This is a top 5 for me for this leg, for sure. Maybe even number 1. I'm not sure. Between this one or New Orleans, but it's stellar, man.
I love it now, without a doubt. I love it now, but I have to confess that it took time to grow on me. It's definitely beautiful. Like I know now, it was a mistake for me not to love it instantly. But when I first saw it, I wasn't really reading too much into the themes and references for lithos. So to me, it just felt strange trying to combine the idea of the city of Cincinnati with the idea of an astronaut.
Right.
I should have known straight away about the astronaut connection, but I may have been focusing on collecting other lithos at the time. I think I'm around at that stage was around about the time that I'd started to go on eBay to see what other what other lithos were available, and so I was sort of focusing on other stuff at the time. I was lucky enough that I didn't need to buy this. I traded for this from a friend who has ended up becoming a very, very good friend when in the world of Guns N' Roses.
Nice, nice.
And so I'm lucky that I didn't have to break the bank for this design, but it is one that has grown on me, and I do love it now without a doubt. But if I were to be a nitpicker, if I were to change one thing just to appease myself, I would give it a simple white border. I don't know whether it was intentional or not, but there's a lot of yellow being used in the lithos from this period, like from Vegas up until now. Like if you look at the North America page for on Lithorati,
Right.
and you sort of look at it from a 10,000-foot perspective, if you look at all of them at once, you see that there's a lot of yellow being used for the first 10 or 20, 10 or 15 shows. And I don't know, I guess I'd rather a little less of it, especially if it's just the border. The design itself, definitely, it can be yellow. The Guns N' Roses Not in This Lifetime can be in yellow. But if the border had been in white, that would have won me over almost instantly. That's just me nitpicking. There's definitely a reason why this is one of the most popular lithos from the entire tour, not just from 2016.
Right.
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 It is possibly the most valuable one from 2016. If you were trying to get your hands on one now. It would be very, very expensive.
Right. And it's funny that you're talking about the border because what I was thinking about, and I never thought about it until now when I'm looking at this, you see how like the whatever you want to call it, the tether or the tube that's going into the astronaut suit, it goes off of it goes into the border, and so does like part of the rose and part of the gun. So like maybe it would have been better to have no border, just have space for that, like the space background fill out the entire thing, right? If you're gonna do that, right? You know what I mean?
I've never seemed to be able to come down on either side of the fence with this. Like I think I prefer my designs to have borders. I can't, like off the top of my head, I can't think of a design I don't think there's a design in my top 10 that is full bleed. Like I think all of my favorite designs have got designs that have borders.
Oh yeah.
But that's probably just, I mean, obviously that's a personal preference. I think it ends up framing, it helps frame the design a little bit better. But for me, also having a border like that on the design gives you the ability to have stuff pop out, like the tether and the roses and the gun, and the foot.
Sure.
I like that.
Sure.
I really do like that. We'll be at San Francisco soon enough. The San Francisco design, the gun also pokes out of the design a little bit, and I'm a big fan of that. I like that.
That's cool, man. Yeah, and I'll say this for this design, like, pretty much impossible to find the shirt for. But there is a shirt for this one. I didn't think there was, but there is. But extremely, I've never been able to find one, and I'm like a huge collector, right? So like, right, as an aside, right? Yeah.
For the fans out there listening, if you know someone who's got a shirt, please get in touch with Tim.
Yeah, I would love it.
One thing I was daydreaming about this design a while ago, and when I was thinking how would I change it, how would I improve it? Can you imagine if those stars were glow in the dark?
Oh my God, man! Yeah,
wouldn't that make it absolutely amazing? Like that would be cool. Either that, or if the stars had been like the sparkles that they used on MetLife.
Oh wow! Yeah, right. Yes,
that would have been a nice touch.
Oh my God!
Nevertheless, as is, it's still a great design.
It is. It really is, man.
And going from Cincinnati to Nashville. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, one of the first ones with a different, shape, of course. I mean, dimensions. I mean, right? But
yeah.
And I understand that this, and you may know more about this company and what they do and their different designs, but um, for me, I find it very weird. I mean, I have it, of course, but and by the way, and this might be intentional, but you see where the skull is, right? If you look at like at the edges around it, you can see like the face is kind of in the like the hair on the top, like whatever was in the
Yeah.
background originally in this picture, right? And so again, that might be fully intentional. I have no idea, um, but yeah, I'm not a fan, man. What can I say?
I don't know too much more than you do about Hatch show print, but what I have been able to ascertain about them is that they are a very well known local print company, and they are very very old. They've been doing poster prints for I think over 100 years. They are yeah, very very well known locally in Nashville. But yeah, I'm not really a fan either. I appreciate that they got someone local and famous to do it like Hatch. That's a very cool idea. I think that possibly maybe something that should be implemented more often. But yeah, like you said, it just has nothing to do with Guns N' Roses. So it doesn't do anything for me. I if you look at some of the other stuff that Hatch Show has done, they're all fairly like in this vein where it's like really meant to be sort of haphazard and a little bit crazy and not perfect. Like you said, you can sort of see the hair poking out the side up the top. The skull that they've put on over the top doesn't entirely encompass the entire head. I think that's just their design, that they're not focusing on these tiny little things. They like it just being very very rough and a little bit punk, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. I like the
But
GNR
yeah,
lapel pin. That's
yeah,
cool.
that's cool. And in real life, like that the those guns, the GNR lapel pin, and the gray of the skull are a little bit silver, right? That
Right.
it's not just a flat gray. It does have a little bit of a sheen to it. So it's cool in that aspect, but I think it could have been done better. And I know that I have asked the question, who the hell is the guy underneath the skull?
Oh yeah, right.
And I know one of my friends actually asked the artist who did it, and I think I think the response he got was he doesn't even know. It was just one of those stock photos or stock designs that he had access to, and yeah, I don't think anybody knows who the photo is of.
That's very interesting, actually, and I
So
like what you said about the color for the guns and the part of the skull and the lapel pin, because that's a thing that people like. A lot of people, I understand we can't all be at the shows, and we can't all pay whatever price you and I might pay to track these down, but. A lot of these lithographs actually look a lot cooler in person. I mean, part of it,
yeah, oh
some of
yeah,
them it's a texture thing, like you said, so you have to feel it. But also some of them it's just like I don't know what it is. Like it's like the lighting or whatever is in person. Like they just look a lot different, and so I know people are quick to criticize certain designs that come out, but and we'll talk about this with some of these other designs on this leg and other legs, but you know. Uh, I think people should, maybe, and you could ask people who already have one. Hey, what do you think? Is there anything cool about this design that I don't? People should ask questions or go on your website to see the details about these things and make that decision on whether they want to track it down or not.
yeah, yeah. I think that is something that definitely doesn't get stated enough. Is that once you see some of these designs in person, they definitely grow on you.
Right.
You see certain aspects that are not immediately visible when you see them on a computer screen, but then when you see them in your hand, it's like, oh wait a minute, this is kind of cool.
Right. And by the way, This is the first show that there's no shirt for,
And
and I don't know
I mean, I
why,
know the
but
reason.
yeah.
Oh, I know the reason why is
Oh.
because
Oh.
with the previous designs, these are all designs that artists have done essentially digitally, and they upload the printable file or so to Bravado, and Bravado essentially has the digital printable file that they can send to the poster printer, and then they can send that digital file to the shirt printer. But because this is Hatch Show and they do everything old school with their old school presses, the design was something that was done essentially not digitally. This is something that
Oh,
they met because the litho itself was designed and printed in house by Hatch Show,
I see.
and they only do prints. They don't do shirts. Therefore, there was no shirt.
Makes sense. That's right. There you go. All right.
I don't think I'm pretty I'm could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that Hatch Show doesn't do shirts. Obviously their equipment is designed to do posters.
Right.
I don't think that they do it. I don't think they do anything else.
Right. Yep. Yep.
And so yeah. Another thing is, like you said about the size. If you're going to deliberately make it a size other than the standard 18 by 24, you better come up with something epic and worthwhile, like maybe Arian's LA trilogy. That is justified as being different. If you're gonna screw up my storage solution, then it better be a good design.
Yeah, true, man.
So I'm not really. I think this is just a remnant of Hatch Show. I think that Hatch Show prints are roughly kind of that size. I don't think that they're all the same size as this, but they're all sort of smaller than 18 by 24, and they vary quite a bit. But yeah, I would have preferred if they said, okay, just for you guys, we'll make one that's 18 by 24.
Yeah, definitely.
So okay, let's move on.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead. You can go first.
Speaking of what we were just talking about, correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't looked at it in a while, but I think this is another one of those ones that looks a lot better I think it's when it first
Agreed.
came out, people are like, oh, but when you look at this one in person, it's actually a lot cooler than looking at it online. If I remember right.
I like the idea, and I agree that it definitely looks better in person because you get to see some of the details. I think if you only look at a low res version of it, some of the really detailed stuff that makes the steelwork theme pop out at you gets lost in the translation to screen. But if you see the 18 by you see it in 18 by 24 in person, you get to see some of those effects.
No, definitely.
But I think it would have been really cool if they'd used some sort of foil effect, or something to enhance the molten metal theme here. I think that would have been a nice addition. But the concept of like a steelworks theme for Pittsburgh is obviously been done before. I think anybody who's into concert posters, they've seen the really amazing and now I think very valuable. There's a Pearl Jam Pittsburgh poster done by Monk One. I think it's Monk One, or it might be Emic, but it's very, very famous. Again, it's got the steelwork theme to it for Pittsburgh, and I think that one might be executed a little bit better, but it's still a very, very cool design.
Yeah, looking at that right now, actually. Yeah, that one is pretty cool, actually. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, I'll admit, when I first saw this one, I think not saw it in person, but saw that this was going to be the design. I hated it, right? But when I got the lithograph in the mail or whatever, I really liked it. Again, not so much that it's like a top 5 or anything for me, but I liked it a lot more than when I just saw it on the computer. So yeah, and this is a little bit nitpicky here, but if we're gonna base this on reality or whatever, right? If the metal's just starting to melt in the picture, right? Then the roses and any organic material would have been long burnt off by then. But
yeah,
still, right?
I'm gonna give. I'll allow a little bit of artistic license.
Sure,
that's not a problem to me. But I agree that when you look at the layout, essentially it's just a giant bullet logo and that's it, you know. And so it can get a little bit. I can understand people being a little tired of it, because essentially it's the same as April Fools. It's the same as the MetLife that we're going to see soon. It's the same as Mexico City. So it inherently is not a design that's going to blow your skirt up. But
And especially when you're paying the same price at every show. So, like, for example, someone who got the Cincinnati astronaut one for $50 is going to buy this one for $50, and you could argue, well, is the value the same here? You know, right? And
yeah.
it's complicated.
Look, it's okay. And it's a very solid theme for Pittsburgh. If it wasn't a solid theme, it wouldn't be used over and over again. But again, not top 10 for me.
Right? Yeah. Same.
But on the flip side, if we move on to Philadelphia, this is the exact opposite. This is one of my killers. This is one of my favorites by far. Since I'm pretty sure this was the first one that I bought on eBay.
Oh wow.
This stood out for me. Definitely one of my top 10 designs. I'm a huge punk fan, and this screams punk to me. You know, it really gives me a big Sex Pistols vibe. And I'm pretty sure it was it was pretty. I'm almost certain that it was the first litho I bought independently on eBay, and by independent I mean for no other reason than I love the design. I bought I will admit I bought the two 2016 Los Angeles lithos on a whim, simply because and I bought them before this one, but I bought them simply because they matched the San Diego 2016 that I had traded for via the forums.
Oh.
And so I got that in a trade, and I realized, oh, wait a minute, you know, this is part of like a trilogy. So I grabbed the two LA lithos on eBay, and funny story that the guy that sold me those two LA lithos, I actually Forrest Gumped my way into getting one of those 10 Sarah Ray Rocket Queen foil variants.
Oh wow, what? Yeah.
Because the guy I bought the two LA lithos from had one of those too.
Oh damn.
And so I thought, oh well, okay, so you're already sending me two. I might as well grab that one as well. You know, I started looking at other designs that were available at the time, and Philadelphia straight away jumped out at me as something that was just inherently a design that spoke to me, and I had to have it. I think it was also the first design, right, where I recognized that there was a reference painting.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely, yeah.
And I'm a sucker for like homages and callbacks and parodies and things like that. So to see that very, very famous painting turned into a punk rock concert poster, it just blew my mind. And so I love it. I really do.
Man, I mean, right, and it does have like, I could totally see what you're saying with like that punk sort of vibe. Meaning, like, at least for me, like it almost looks like a flyer a band might put together by just copying and pasting, like, but done in a cool way, like, you know what I mean, and making like their own, like a very do-it-yourself kind of vibe to it, right? You know, I think it's cool, like they did the whole skeleton for Ben Franklin, because it's kind of like he's being electrocuted at the time. It's like you can be able to see like his, you know, it's pretty neat. And
to me, that could be an album cover. You know, that's awesome. That would make for a great album cover.
That would be actually really cool. And you know, this is one of the first ones I think that I was able to have someone get me at the show. So I was able to get it like at cost.
Oh wow,
and
okay,
everything, right? You know, which was huge and very helpful. But no, yeah, I really like it too, and it's a very unique color scheme for GNR in general, and especially for the GNR lithographs. Yeah, I think he knocked it out of the park on this one.
Knocked it out of the park, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, right? I mean, you know,
all right.
What can I say? Yeah.
Let's move on.
Sure.
Toronto. I like the design. And I remember when I said that I liked the design and I was looking for one, the friends that collected lithos with me at the time were like, "You're the only one." I don't know too many other people who agree with me. I think similar to the Troubadour lithograph, with it being very muted with a single contrast color. I think it looks cool how the red pops like that. Again, it gives me that Frank Miller Sin City vibe, and yeah, I love it. I like it a lot. I think it's, and I think because it's Canada as well, as in terms of rarity or availability, it is comparatively rare. I think for a multitude of reasons, lithos and merchandise in general from north of the border don't really find their way out of Canada as much as one might expect.
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
I know I was late to the game, but even then, I haven't seen too many of these pop up for sale over the years.
Right. And I never even noticed this before, but if you look, like, you see where, like, the neck of the guitar, the neck of the bass, and the spine are, and the background is
Yeah.
like the to Canada maple leaf. You see that? Like,
Yeah,
I never
what
even
I
noticed that
first
till
thought
now.
it was.
Yeah.
The first time I saw it, I thought it was
Oh, I
the
see
Air
this,
Canada
and I
logo.
see this in your notes there. Sorry, I never read that before.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, no,
Like,
that's
yeah.
okay. The first time I saw it, I thought it like I saw the maple leaf, and I thought, oh, is that the where did they play at the Air Canada Center?
Oh, right.
But it wasn't.
Right.
They played at the Rogers Center, but it definitely it sort of at least the first time I saw it, the instant feeling that I had was, oh, it looks like the Air Canada logo, but it isn't. It's
Right.
just yeah, it's just the maple leaf.
And it is a pretty interesting way. Most lithographs, when they want to reference Axel, Slash, and Duff, they'll have, like, either like the skull, from Appetite for Destruction or something. But this one has a pretty unique way of referencing them, right? Just having the neck of the
Agreed.
guitar, the neck of the bass, and the microphone, right? I mean,
Yeah, that I think that's smart. I think
right.
that's a great image to come up with. You know.
And I totally agree with you with the color scheme and the way it pops, and especially for me, the GNR logo at the top. I like that red and white, man. And against the black. Like, for me, that's probably
Agreed.
my favorite way I've ever seen their logo. You know, and this is another one, by the way, that there was. You can get shirts nowadays. They made shirts, like, after the fact, like at H&M or H&M, whatever that store is, like in the
Oh,
UK or
okay.
something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But, like, but they never had them at the show, and I don't know,
I
again,
wonder.
why. I don't know, but you know, but yeah, very cool, man. And you're right. I don't know what it is about about Canada, but their stuff doesn't seem to come down to the U.S. or even on eBay either, right? And I understand there's a Canadian eBay site, but even then, you don't see it on there either, right?
Well, the story that I've heard, or the reason that I've heard from Canadian friends, is that shipping is just ridiculous back and forth to Canada. So people that are on eBay Canada don't. It's not easy to sell your item to people in the U.S., because if they're in the U.S., they expect a certain cost for sending something domestically,
right,
and they
right,
expect it to turn up very
rapidly,
quickly.
right,
But if you buy something from Canada, it's going to take probably I've heard it could take another week, if not two, to arrive,
well,
and it costs like double the amount, because it's got to clear customs. It's technically
right.
international postage.
And I could totally verify that, because for right before the effect, like, how I was telling you, I used to live in Alaska, right? And the town I lived in was Skagway, Alaska, and people, there were the closest big city to that was Whitehorse, Canada, right? And all the time
Hmm.
people would come from Canada to go check their post office box that they kept in the Skagway post office in the United States. Now think about it. You're talking about a 2.5 hour drive one way just to come get their mail, and not that
Yeah.
they didn't have mail in Whitehorse, but the Canadian Postal Service sucks that much that they would come just to use the U.S. Postal Service, right? And I think they were trying
Yeah,
to
yeah.
avoid customs fees too. But still, like, right? It just goes to show. You're right. Absolutely, there's a problem with their postal service, and you know,
Shipping is very, very, and
no
yeah,
offense if you're
shipping is
Canadian,
very, very expensive.
right?
No, no, I feel sorry for them,
Right.
because like it would be very frustrating, like especially if you live just over the border, right? If you lived in Vancouver, and shipping something an hour away ends up being such an ordeal, it can be a real pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've heard a lot of stories of people saying that they don't even bother trying to list something on eBay because as soon as people find out that it's coming from Canada and it's going to cost $40 to ship instead of $10, it's like
They don't want it. Right.
I'll get it somewhere else. I'll get it from someone selling it in the U.S.
Right. Right. Understandable. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Moving on. One of the classics.
Oh, yep.
What a great set, right?
I mean,
It's epic.
right. The way it's like you could put them together. That's brilliant. A top five for me for this leg, and I think for most people. You know, and I'm also a kind of like a. I mean, one, I have a connection to like Massachusetts and Boston and everything, and I went to school there, and that I'm granted it's Foxboro, but close enough, whatever, right? And
Yeah.
like the historical context of it, too, right? Everything about it for me is just like perfect,
Yeah. It's really done so well. I think my only gripe, like literally my only gripe about it, is that they never numbered them.
Yeah.
Which means that it's easier to make a fake of them than other lithographs. And just recently, it was a topic in the one of the Facebook groups. But my friend got duped by a fake, one that he didn't even notice was a fake until he had his Foxboro litho right next to. He had his night 1 next to his night 2, and noticed that the paper stock was different.
Oh.
So if if you're in the market for a Foxboro set, you really got to be careful. You really have to make sure that you're buying from a reputable seller. And the more that he looked at it, he realized that there were other issues with it that he didn't notice until he had it side by side with a legit one. Like the colors are a little bit off as well.
Oh yeah.
But only slightly, and you wouldn't notice it until you started looking. Yeah, I think we were talking about this recently. One popped up on eBay recently for what I considered to be a suspiciously low price.
I made an offer on that.
Yeah,
they didn't accept my offer, but I made an offer.
Yeah, and like oh well, actually, this was maybe a couple months back actually.
Oh okay,
There was another set that yeah, and it was from a seller with no history of selling Guns N' Roses merchandise, and I instantly got goosebumps, because I was wondering if it was too good to be true, and wondering if oh boy, is someone just about to get scammed? I guess we'll never know. But yeah, to all those collectors listening, buyer beware. These lithos, especially the ones that are unnumbered. I think generally speaking, there are not too many fakes out there. I don't think that it's really an issue. However, I know from personal experience that this is one that is and can be copied, especially because it's a full bleed design, so you don't have to worry about making sure that your borders are parallel and lined up properly, and it's not numbered, so you could print out a million of them if you really wanted to, and there's no chance of you running into someone who has the same number as you, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's definitely I mean, it's some sad shit, but it's a buyer beware world, and eBay, I think, because like they're partnered with PayPal. I know PayPal used to have a 45-day return policy, but I heard it might be 30 days now. I'm not sure if they changed that or not. Not return policy, but I mean like by the time you think you can file a complaint or a grievance or whatever,
Yeah.
And sometimes like because I understand how it is, right? I mean, like for example, sometimes I might have to go to the post office to pick it up, right? You know what I mean? So that might take a couple of days. And then, you bring it back, but then you're busy with your life and you don't even open it until another couple of days. And then by the time you really, and by the time you're done and you're comparing it to a real one, the 30 days or 45 days or whatever it is have already lapsed, and then you're kind of screwed, right? I mean, what can you do?
That's why there is value in purchasing it from the Facebook groups, because then you can find out from other people. Oh, do you know this guy? Yeah, I've met him before. You can work off of reputation, if not people that know the person
right
in real life, or someone else who has purchased from them before. I think that's why some some sellers on eBay, they've got a good reputation. They've sold quite a few lithos in the past, and so they're easy go-tos. You know, if you need to go get a litho and they're selling it, you're 99% certain that they're not going to send you a fake. You can bank on that. They may not necessarily be the cheapest, but you're paying for that peace of mind.
Right, right. And another connection I have to this one is that based off the painting that it's based on, because I'm from Long Island originally, right? And this is the Battle of Long
Oh,
Island,
okay.
right? So
Yeah.
yeah, man,
Nice,
yeah.
nice. The artist Tim Butler, he hasn't done too many since this. He's done Singapore, and he did the Belgian litho from 2018, Decel or Decel.
Oh yeah,
I like his style. I wish that he'd do more.
me too. Yes, yes.
I hope that he does more in 2020, but definitely this is iconic, classic pair of lithographs.
And is that like his signature, that X or whatever it is? I guess.
Yeah,
Or...
yeah. If he, I can't remember exactly what the X is about, but like for example, from off the top of my head, his company or his logo, sorry, his website name is like 13 Design, like XIII Design or something.
Oh,
So I don't know what it is, but that is his sort of signature, his own sort of logo.
I see. Okay, okay, that makes
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
and his other stuff is very very cool. He doesn't, not all of them are like this sort of cartoony illustrations. He does some other artwork that is absolutely mind bending. It's really really cool.
Nice, man. Nice.
Okay, let's move on.
To
Next
Jersey.
is yeah, okay.
And
Now,
oh sorry.
no, go ahead.
Well, this is another one of those ones where, like, again, I'm not saying it's like a top five or anything for me, but looks way, way better in person. Like, you have to understand that for people who don't have never seen it in person. Like, I mean, do you agree, man? Like,
100%. A lot more. Like there, you would get no sense of how beautiful it is unless you see it in person.
yep, yep. I mean,
When you see it in person, when you see the foil and the sparkles, like that's one thing no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to get that feeling for the sparkle effect
yeah.
until you see it in person. And yeah, I guess, yeah, I wish more people could get to see what this looks like in person. And in terms of the reference, I guess it should have clicked earlier for me. I didn't realize it until someone told me.
I don't think about that either. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the reference to Thomas Edison. I needed to be told that by someone at Bravado Management to tell me that was the reference that they were going with.
Mhm. I just thought maybe it would be cool if they would. And because, I was told that they were originally, remember the Troubadour show and they did that, memorabilia display museum that they had?
Yes.
Well, they were supposed to, I'm not sure about all of it or not and what it would look like, but that was actually supposed to go, like, on tour with them. Metallica does a similar thing where they bring, like, a lot of memorabilia and you can, like, pay to go see it or whatever, right?
Okay.
And how cool would it be if they brought with them certain lithographs like this that you have to see in person to appreciate?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
because, right, maybe it's just me, but, it's not even about taking pictures because for this one, did you just get the picture online or did you scan it with your scanner?
No, all of the pictures that I've got online are personal scans.
See? And even scanned, you can't get that feeling from it, right? Like,
Well, not only that, but you look at it, you can't even tell that that's foil.
Yeah,
right? Foil
right.
does not come off
Yeah.
very well at all when you're scanning.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that, like we say, it looks better in person.
Yeah. So for anyone who, like, I mean, obviously, if completists are going to want all of them, but, like, if you're on the fence about this one and you see it for a decent price, I recommend grabbing it. I think you'll be very happy with it.
Agreed.
Ah,
MetLife Night 2, however, we'll move on to the next one.
yeah.
Yeah, I like the design. However, I understand why other people don't. I know very few people who share my feelings about liking it. But I like myths and legends and being used as references for design. So this was right in my wheelhouse. But other people, they buy it to frame and put up on the wall, and I think they just didn't really want to have a devil up on the wall.
Right, right. Well, and I understand, like, depending on your personal beliefs, people may not like that, but and it's not really even like a. I mean, the reference to it, it's not really like even a satanic. I know that the name of the myth.
No, right? It's not. It's not even the real devil. It's the Jersey Devil.
Right.
It's something else entirely.
Right, which is just like almost like, not like Bigfoot and what it looks like, but I mean, in terms of like, it's just like a creature. It doesn't have like any like satanic like undertones or anything. Maybe the design here, you could argue, does, right? But
yeah, that's definitely arguable.
Right. And it's funny because I was looking at a lot of these recently because I was getting ready for this podcast that we're doing, right? And I never even noticed the outline of the New Jersey state in the forehead.
Oh, the state, yeah, on the forehead. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny because sometimes people post things on Facebook, like in the GNR Collectors group or whatever, and they're like, "Oh my God, I've never seen that." And I always comment, "Wow, you really need to take a look at my website," And it's clear that I need to read yours more because I know you referenced that in the comments below, but somehow I've never read that or I've never seen it there before. But,
there's and there's a lot of subtleties that people when you're not paying that much attention to it, you can gloss over it. And talking about states, that's there's another poster like that from 2019, the Manchester poster, Manchester, Tennessee. The design is of Death riding a motorcycle, and the license plate for the motorcycle is in the shape of the state of Tennessee.
Oh, and yeah, look at that.
If you don't know, like, the general shape of what the state of Tennessee looks like, you're going to gloss right over it. You're just going to think that it's a rectangular license plate at an angle. But when you look at it again, you realize, oh, wait a minute, yeah, that's Tennessee.
That is cool, man. Actually, I never noticed that until you just talked about it now, and I went to that page and I saw that. That's really cool, yeah. And I should know because I know the state of Tennessee is shaped like it.
Right.
Somehow I missed it. Wow, that's really cool. And for this one too, I can't remember what it's called, but I like this design. But how to phrase it? This kind of art. It's like, I don't know. It's like you scratch like a black background and this comes out. I can't remember what it's called, but
I can't remember it off the top of my head, but I know what you're talking about.
And I like that type of artwork, and I think this is that. It looks like that to me anyway. And again, not a top 5 for me for this leg, but still, I like it a lot.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've managed to be a pair of really chatty bitches. I think for the sake of everybody's sanity, I'm gonna recommend that we bring this first episode to an end. I really, really didn't think we'd end up speaking this long. Did you, Tim?
No, not at all. But happy to do it.
I guess I know we love to talk, Guns N' Roses and lithographs, but even this kind of exceeded my expectations. But nevertheless, thank you everyone for joining us and listening along. I hope we've managed to be at least interesting enough to have you coming back for the second installment. We'll go through the rest of the 2016 lithographs and discuss some related topics and maybe hand out some awards. Tim, do you have anything else to add?
No, I can't think of anything, but I'm glad we were able to take time to do this, and like Rich said, thanks to everyone for listening in. Thanks for any questions and comments you have. We definitely will read them and try to respond to all of them if we can. But yeah, this was great.
Excellent. We've got a lot more to come. Hope to have you back. Thanks for your time.